Nice.
Opening to order at 7:30. Adequate notice of this meeting being held on August 18th, 2022, as compliant with Section 3D of Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Sunshine Law. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, there we go.
It's just literally right on the river.
This was at the South Fork.
Roll call, please.
And Muir,
Here.
Nelson. Here. Mr. Keith is excused. Lindsay.
Here.
Randolph.
Here.
Mr. O'Bradnick is excused. Mr. Decker.
Here.
Ms. Mooney. Here. And Attorney Mitchell. Here. Thank you.
Motion open for public comment.
Make that motion of public comment.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No problem.
Suzanne Wilder, 424 Charlestown Road. A few things. One is I'd like to hear back from, if you found out about the no parking stickers. You don't have to do it now, but at some point.
I can address that with you offline, Suzanne, as a private property owner. Happy to discuss it with you.
Okay, but in general, what's the law?
Well,
So if the property is private property, it's a property owner's property. So the county right of way that's there, when it's over right of way, that's for the county, if they have to say do road work, putting drains in, do extensions. It's not mean that anybody can just park their car there and go hang out because it's a county right of way on there. It's still the property owners. Every homeowner has roadway frontage. There is some sort of right of way that either the town, the county, or the state has to your property to do any sort of work that they would have to do.
Okay, well, if they're valid, that's fine.
Yeah.
And then in that case, I would like to talk to you in person because it would be helpful to me if I could park there on my trail crew, if we could. But-
yeah, I understand. I know that the former owner of my home, they had petitioned the county and had started to build actually an access trail from the bottom of Brunswick Pike, going behind the drainage ditch and then hooking into the trail at a little bit different angle. Yeah, there is still something there.
I don't know if that ever panned out. That was when we first, I think it was almost when we first.
The county did not do it, the former owner did. And there is some remnants of a trail there. If you wanted to park on the, what we call the ghost property, that's down at the bottom there.
Oh, by the building that's,
Yeah, and a lot of people do park there and then they walk up behind and behind the yellow home and go up that way.
I know I've parked sometimes in the old municipal building parking lot of the museum, but I'm getting older. Carrying my wee whacker.
I mean, ever
It's
since.
okay. It's not a problem. If it's legally that I can't park
Yeah,
there, then that's okay.
I get that, and like I said, happy to talk to you offline, but ever since that accident up at that corner, which was, thank God, the people who own the car were not in it.
Okay,
That's, I don't want that happening on my property again.
okay, fair enough.
Okay.
I asked, I got my answer.
No, you got it. Okay.
Two other things. One is, I'm hoping that Mr. Decker talks about the tier A stormwater
We
thingy.
have a lot to talk about.
I have not read any of those papers, so I'm clueless, but I know that it's very interesting and complex. And then,
Interesting is kind.
huh?
Interesting is a kind word.
Well, I said complex, it's just, but, so you'll fill us in layman's terms, not.
I'll try.
And then, Mr. Mayor, you had attended a home business initiative with the county.
Yes.
And I see, and so my question, and I know is before the planning board, so this might be the wrong board, but there is a statement in here that you had in your interview that I'm a little concerned with, and when will the public have input into this? And how will trying to get more businesses be impacted possibly by the new stormwater regs? And so,
So there was a home-based business model ordinance that the 7822 coalition, there's a 7822 Economic Development Coalition, that's all the towns from Reddington to Bloomsbury, just for some residents who don't always pay attention, they're joining with the meetings. And we look at economic development options along the 7822 corridor. The County Economic Development Office organizes that, they pay for this, the Highlands paid for this model ordinance. So Bethlehem Township probably has one of the newer, if not the newest, home-based business or home occupation ordinance. So this is a model ordinance because we saw that during the pandemic, a lot of people decided to stay at home or start their own business out of their home. And that was a way of providing economic development without new building or impacting any new construction or expansion. But the long story short is Bethlehem may or may not even take action on this, since ours is one of the newer, so it's been given to the planning board as a model ordinance. The planning board members are going to look at it and say, do we need to do anything with ours? Are there any good suggestions in here? And if they are, they'll open it up and amend that ordinance. If they say we're happy with ours the way it is, then nothing happens with that ordinance. So if they open it up and decide to make changes based on the model ordinance, then there'll be a public comment section.
okay, well, I haven't read it yet, so it's on my staff papers to read. But,
I just don't think we're adopting it or changing anything, and we may not do anything.
okay, well, when you say quarter, that means the whole township.
Yes, every town.
That was just, I did not understand that when I first heard about the initiative. So, thank you. But the one statement that in your interview that did kind of concern me, you'd like to see an easier process that would not require a planning board review unless it's highly intensive business. And that kind of concerned me because you're weakening rules. And when you say that, something like that, and that's, my red flag goes up because you have the Highlands Act and stormwater regs.
We would follow all, like when we approve planning board, it's like all applicable state, local, like, so it would fall under whatever Highlands. And if you read that, because a lot of municipalities agreed with me on that. So what they've offered in that, and you can finally do read it, is a tiered system. So like Franklin Township gave the option of, there's a gentleman, if you drive around Hunter County, there's these signs, Hunter and knife sharpening. So it's a single guy in his garage sharpening knives and utensils. Like that, they would just want to have him come in, and I'm saying this is what we do, but that's what's in the model ordinance, would be like a tier one. He would just come in, pay his fee, register his business, you know he's there, that's it. If you start having employees or customers, he actually goes out and picks up the knives too, so nobody ever comes to it. But if you have customers there, or you have employees that come, or it's more intensive use, then that's a tier two and tier three, and it's in the model ordinance.
Okay.
We do something similar, we have a minor and a major home
I
occupation.
remember.
And so like I said, we may not take any action at all since we already have the minor and major.
Okay, I just, my red flag goes up when I hear statements like that, blanket statements, because it doesn't reflect what we are, which was wanting to preserve our, I understand we want to have economic development and, you know, help our residents, but when it comes time for possibly interfering with environmental constraints, that's a big no-no in my mind. Thank you.
Thank you. And public comment. Motion to close public comment?
Motion to close public comment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There's no meeting held on August 4th, so no minutes, so regular executive session minutes of July 21st. Have a motion to adopt or approve?
Make a motion to adopt approved minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I abstain. Resolutions, resolution 2022.67, opposition to New Jersey ABC special conditions on limited brewery licenses. So we have no craft breweries in our town. A lot of municipalities are supporting opposition to the even more restrictive rules that they placed on these breweries. So I think we should join on that if it ever does become an option here in town. I think it's a proper way to support these small businesses. So can I have a motion to adopt?
Make a motion to adopt.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I actually have a question. I'm a brewery owner
Then
of Caitlin. My brewery is not in New Jersey. Can I vote on this or should I abstain as a brewery owner? I would just abstain. Abstain.
Motion to adopt resolution 2022-68, authorizing contract for fireworks display on Community Day.
Make the motion to adopt that.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Excellent. So Community Day is September 24th, and obviously there'll be fireworks.
Person involves money, you want to roll over?
Sure.
That's,
I would
I'm
agree.
okay with later.
I would agree.
Okay, Keith is excused. Lindsay,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes,
Randolph,
Yes.
Muir,
Yes. And also we received a grant from Hunter County Economic Development Office, the amount of $5,000, and we put $6,000 in our budget for Community Day, so these fireworks are covered by the county grant, which is very helpful. There'll be limited expenses beyond fireworks from our budget, so any money saved from Community Day will go into our surplus and be applied to the budget next year. Resolution 2022-69, stigma-free resolution, so all of the counties in Hunterdon are looking to pass this stigma-free community resolution regarding mental health to make sure that people are more aware, take away the obvious stigma associated with it, and offer enhanced services eventually through the county. So kind of a motion to approve.
Make the motion to approve.
That's second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much for approving that. Resolution 2022-70, supporting passage of Senate bill to commemorate events of September 11th, 2001. So this is to support the education in our schools, to enhance education of September 11th events.
Don't make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
aye,
And the final one is resolution 2022-71, person-to-person plenary license transfer. So this is layman's terms, a liquor license transfer.
I'll make the motion to accept that as well.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
aye,
And can I have a motion to pay all bills in the amount of $749,568.73?
I'll make the motion to pay the bills.
Second.
A roll call vote, please.
Mr. Keith is excused. Lindsay,
Yes.
Nelson,
yes,
Randolph,
Yes.
Muir.
Yes.
Well, just for the public's benefit, almost 500,000 of that is going specifically to county taxes. So it's not like we're running a checkbook. It's a big nut that we have to pay on a regular basis. Comes up and you jump out, these numbers jump out. But for foundational purposes, we're actually running pretty lean. But that just happens to be why this is such a big number for this particular bill.
And so if you look, it's about, it's about 120,000 is actual our use of these funds, and the rest dispensing your taxes to the other agencies that we collect for. So, report of municipal engineer, Mr. Decker.
Okay, before I get into the tier B, tier A stuff, I'll cover a couple of things. One, just an update on the Heritage Park. We were able to finally get a quote from the well driller. But we also, now we have to, he won't do the installation of the hose bit and the drinking fountain, so we have to try to get a plumber on board for that, work with Carl to get some quotes for that. The well driller came in at a reasonable price, will be well within our grant award. Iron Bridge section 1 has been completed. Janet, we haven't already turned in the payment request for their. Yes, there was a slight reduction. But we'll get that. All right.
Can I ask what the quote was?
What's
What was
that?
the quote?
For the well drill, I think it was around $18,000. And then that's based off of them going, I think with a 400-foot well, and then it's $25 per foot after that. So even if they go another, if they have to go deeper, we're still, our grant was $60,000. So, and again, we want to take care of the well and the water service first, and then whatever we have left is when, we'll apply that to the pergolas and the benches, and whatever else we spend it on. If there's nothing else, I'll go into the, our Okay, so the tier B to tier A reassignment. It's not stormwater management regs that would apply to an applicant. These are regulations that for the township to comply with. Right now, we are a tier B municipality. I fill out, I'm the township's stormwater coordinator on an annual basis. By, I believe it's May 1st, I have to submit a report to DEP that the township, any applications that have come before the boards have been held to the stormwater management regulations, that the DPW has been cleaning inlets and so forth, that all of our inlets are marked with, drains to a stream type thing. There's also, we've had an effort in contacting entities that have stormwater management basins because they're supposed to report to the town that they perform maintenance. That's been a slow process because some of these basins have been there for a number of years, and tracking down ownership and so forth is not straightforward. And it's been, and there's also, as some of the planning board members may know, there were online classes that you could take that contributed towards the public education requirement. There were so many points that you had to do annually, whether it was things on the website, community projects, things like that. There are different categories, and with working with the Environmental Commission, we've always been able to satisfy those. And that's a tier B. Tier A elevates things significantly. Tier A's have typically been for your more densely populated communities with higher traffic and so forth. Some of the things that are required for a tier A, there's a host of ordinances that need to be adopted. Most of them water quality related, pet waste, wildlife feeding ordinances, things of that nature. But there are other things that do come at a cost to the municipality. And some of the things are, one that could be very costly is going to be street sweeping. We don't typically do street sweeping in Bethlehem Township. Tier A communities do. It has to be done on a set schedule. And in the past, for a tier A community, those roads would be any road that's 35 miles an hour or less is curbed and in a commercial district. Well, that wouldn't necessarily affect Bethlehem too badly. However, they're also changing the tier A requirements. And they're stiffening up the requirements for tier A, which we will also have to comply with. So we get, as a tier B community, we're getting a double whammy. Not only do we have to elevate to a tier A, the current tier A, we're also going to have to comply with all the additional bells and whistles that the tier A community is going to have. So the street sweeping is going to be changed, I believe, to pretty much any street that has drainage structures along it, which is pretty much any street. And it has to be done, I believe, quarterly or every 3 months. So that's a significant cost to the township.
And what is swept up has to be recorded, weighed, and reported.
Yes.
Did the counties have to do the county roads?
Yes. The counties will have to take care of their roads, municipalities will have to take care of.
The state would have, the state.
Well,
They may or may not.
They may or may not, and I'm not 100% sure on the counties, but our concern obviously is with the municipality. We also have to put together a stormwater pollution prevention plan, which is basically a letter, or not a letter, a report outlining stormwater management within the community and how that's managed and so forth. We also would need to locate all of the storm sewer inlets and outfalls by GPS and map them and provide that to DEP for their database. Again, these are all things that are at a cost to the town.
You don't already have this stormwater, things, GPS?
We did not have to do that as a tier B, we didn't have to do that. The Highlands was starting to get in that direction, but that never really realized.
Or for emergency management, the state gave us the outlets, so we're on 78 after 70 car accidents, but it's just that we don't have them for the whole.
It was only on certain areas.
Right, yeah, because
I
that was,
remember something.
yeah, that was because of the spills on
Yeah,
78
after the-
and being able to track where any spills went into the waterways. So, and there's other things built in there, but suffice it to say, there's a lot that throws at the towns. They've said that the DEP intends to provide funding. And again, intends, but has not really provided any guidance on that. There are some grants that are starting to come out, but as we're finding out, the likelihood that Bethlehem qualifies for them are going to be slim. So it's not funded. We're looking at compliance, required compliance in 2023. So the town was presented with two options, basically. One was within 180 days after getting the notice, which was conveniently sent out the Friday before the 4th of July weekend. We were provided with, I believe, 180 days to basically apply for this permit, the MS4 permit, or within 30 days of getting the letter, which I think we got on maybe July 8th, somewhere around there. Within 30 days, submitting a request basically for a hearing with DEP to discuss it with them and enter into some negotiations. Because there is a individual permit aspect of this where we may, and that's a big may, be able to work things out with DEP that, okay, what are the things that are specific to Bethlehem that we can address and go that way. It's not something that, we're not going to get away from doing everything, but if we can try to negotiate some of the things, we can. So a letter went out on August 5th to DEP requesting that hearing. We also put together, our office put together as an exhibit that went along with that letter, basically showing DEP that, we're 95% in the Highlands Preservation Area. We've got, the number of farmland that's been preserved or green acres, and the fact that over the past 20 years, and since the Tier A, Tier B program was in place, Bethlehem really has had no development. I think the last subdivision we had was probably in the late 90s.
I finished up 2003 or 4.
Right, but we haven't had any major subdivisions or anything like that, or any development. So the other argument is nothing's changed. So we haven't heard anything back, at least I haven't, from DEP.
No, we haven't. We did apply, like you said, for a hearing. Haven't heard back. I'm just going to add from an operational, not an engineering standpoint, but there's community-wide ordinances. So there's like 9 potential ordinances that we would need to adopt based on the reporting requirements. We've discussed it. This could be, if worst case scenario, if we had to follow all the requirements of Tier A, would most likely require employing another staff member because we don't have the capacity to do this. So, but yet there's no funding for it. So I was going to bring up under my mayor's report, but at least regarding this. So I'll bring it up for this because we need some capacity. When we went and applied for our hearing, we've joined 2 other Hunter County communities. But in addition, I'm the first vice president of the Conference of Mayors. And in our board meeting last Thursday, I brought this up. And the president of the League of Municipalities and their executive director reached out to me this week. And so the league and the conference are going to go back to the DEP and the state as an unfunded mandate and see what we can do as a group. There are 100 and some odd municipalities that will be negatively impacted by this. Again, we're in support of making sure that the environmental protections are in place, but when it comes to our taxpayers saying you need to do these things, I mean, it's going to cost another staff member the purchase and or long-term lease or contract of a street sweeper. I mean, if you look at the dollars that are going into this, and it is an unfunded mandate, so I think we have some good traction when we have 100+ municipalities coming together. But this has already been issued, so it's going to be a bit of a battle to see where it ends.
Yeah, and just to add it, all of the existing Tier B municipalities are being reassigned to A. So across the board.
So
So
essentially, it was the federal designation and funding went away, and so the state decided rather than having to manage it, they just got rid of the Tier Bs to comply and made everybody a Tier A. And best case scenario, they may provide funding, which I'm not very confident in, and they may provide waivers, again, which I'm not very confident in, that those waivers will be enough that it makes this not onerous on us to comply. There's no definitive answer right now.
Thank you, it was very helpful. And it's more helpful to hear, because I couldn't really hear what was when I was at home.
Do you have an estimate of what it would cost to?
I have no idea at this point. And that's one of the things is that, you know, they implemented these deadlines, like this 30-day deadline. So our biggest ask on this is we need some time. You know, we need to assess how this impacts the town and so forth before we can put together a formulated response to DEP, because you just can't.
I mean, just simple numbers, and the things that we brought up tonight, if you have those ordinances, an average ordinance costs, I'm gonna say about $6,000. And some of these are much more complicated than an average ordinance. So that's a significant cost. If we have to hire a staff member, that's pretty obvious with that, that's gonna be a significant cost. To comply with street sweeping, you're probably end up having to purchase something. I mean, I don't know if there's a lease contract makes sense, but either way, it's not gonna be inexpensive.
Yeah,
So
it's not a one and done expense, it's perennial.
Yeah, right.
You know, maybe the mapping, the report gets updated, gets updated and it's not as bad, but street sweeping and everything else is, every year.
Didn't officially open for the public, but just for our record, I can say state your name and
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Gary Lindgren, 22 Willow Road.
thank you. Well, thank you, Tom. Thank you for the breakdown, because we shared it with our planning board so that they saw what ordinances could be coming down the road. And we'll have you stay for some of these. Report of public safety officials. I know there was a trooper. Yeah, I believe. Oh, there you go. Sorry, our screen has a partial error message. I couldn't see that you were there.
How you doing? I'm sorry I couldn't make it tonight. Had some scheduling issues, but I just wanted to attend and answer any questions or concerns that anybody may have. I know we've been getting complaints about the traffic because of the rock blast on 78. Unfortunately, that's an issue that is going to be an issue for a little while, and there's not really a solution for it at this time, but we have been getting calls from residents of Bethlehem saying 173 is backed up and Route 78 is backed up, but unfortunately at this time, there's not really a good resolution for it.
So a quick question, because and I'll talk about it later under the mayor's report, but Mr. Decker and I had a pretty extensive meeting with DEP or DOT and the county that joined us. Do your state police patrols, the squadrons, are you increasing the numbers, or are you working with your usual numbers during the highway shutdowns?
During the you mean during the when they shut the highway down? Are there more troopers on patrol?
Are there more troopers on patrol during that time?
The same amount of troopers are on patrol, but the people who shut down the roadway are from a different unit. They're not from Perryville at that time, so we're not taking troopers from the road to shut the highway down. The same amount of troopers are on the road all day long.
Okay.
Just a quick question. Has there been any,
And when you got the Dodger on and they come straight out of the water.
It
sorry, Drew,
has some feedback.
yeah,
Kirsten, can you
has there been any additional patrols in regard to the excessive truck traffic with that? I know there's been a lot of trucks veering off roads they shouldn't be on, especially during their closures. Like the troopers out there trying to routes them back into the way they should be going?
Yeah, so I guess the main complaints we've gotten were from 173, if trucks are going on, the roads that they shouldn't be going on. Somebody can make us aware of exactly what and when they're going on, because I know there are troopers who are on those roads, but it'd be nice to, if there's a complaint about a specific road, to get that nailed down, and we'll make sure to ramp up the patrol during that time.
Trooper, but I guess I was gonna talk about it later, but since we're talking about it now, I might as well cover it with Mr. Decker. So I had reached out, the county planning director also shared the closure updates with us, and then I shared with her that the situation is unbearable in Bethlehem Township during the rock blasts.
Right.
So Lindsay, his OEM capacity, we had a tractor trailer on a road it shouldn't have been, hit a transformer, residents were without power. We see the trucks on the roads. We also see just regular cars, which are allowed to be there at high rates of speed, trying to find ways around. So I asked to have a meeting with DOT. So the county commissioner, Soloway, county planners, quite a few DOT members, Mr. Decker and I had a meeting about it. And some of these things, like you're saying about the trucks, it's not going to be immediate. They're going to be lasting through mid-fall, but hopefully by spring, when they start to take a break in the winter, in spring, they'll be lasting again. We're hoping to have signage installed on 173 before the roads. A lot of times our roads, like if you go on Tunnel Road, it'll say no trucks beyond whatever, 6 tons, whatever it is. DOT has agreed to put those out on 173 before the trucks get to those roads, so they know not to turn on them. I'm hoping one of the bigger advantages with the DOT communications director who's there, and they communicate with all the GPS services. And so they're going to try to ask them to not put those roads in as alternate routes. And then they also provided all those names to us, and we will be reaching out. I'm going to coordinate with Mr. Lindsay. There's about 12 GPS various providers, and we will reach out as a municipality also requesting that those roads be removed as alternate routes for trucks and hopefully even some vehicles. And then they also asked the construction company that has the contract. Apparently they own the signboards that are on 78. So we've asked for some additional stuff when you're driving, but you're sitting in traffic for some time before that. It's going to have more information about, like, remain on 173 as your detour. They're going to try to change some language on those signboards.
Right. So I have seen that verbiage on those signs recently saying, stay on 173, don't use the back roads as your alternate route. So I don't know if that's helping, but
That's part of that meeting, with whether people actually do it or not, but at least it's there.
right.
To start.
There does appear to be somewhat of a pattern to the shutdowns, I've noticed, because my property abuts up to 173. Anytime between, I would say, 10:30 to 12:30 appears to be the peak of it.
I think they do one.
Is there
one
some
way.
sort of project management around that or something?
They're only allowed to blast between 10 and 2. So that's why you're finding it in that. In that range. So that's their limitation. It can only blast twice a day between 10 and 2. And then when we get to the fall, they'll get to a point where they're going to cease. I think maybe by October 1st that they're supposed to stop. And then they hold off on any more blasting until the spring, and then they'll pick up again.
Yeah.
And it'll go again until the fall of 2023.
Hopefully, if not longer. Really appreciate what you can do out there, and actually we're trying to get some signage and help out on our end too.
Yes, I will relay the message. And again, if there's a specific area off 173 that's a problem, I just ask that somebody report it to us and that we can make that area a focus for people cutting through or traffic, people taking shortcuts trying to get around it.
We will definitely reach out.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Onto old business, a public hearing for ordinance 472.2022 road improvement program. Have a motion to open the public hearing.
Make a motion over the public hearing.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Questions, discussion? So this is a road improvement plan for Iron Bridge Road, Person Road, totaling $528,433. Of that, $428,433 is coming from New Jersey DOT grants, and $100,000 is coming out of our budget. So it's just improving those expenditures, those improvements. We appreciate, now that we complained about DOT with the rock blasting, we'll thank DOT for their grant program. We appreciate the work that they do. No further discussion or questions. You have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close public comment.
Second. Have a motion to adopt?
Make a motion to adopt.
Second. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Keith is excused. Lindsay,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Randolph,
Yes.
Muir.
Yes. There's quite a few items in the new business. Our first is a discussion of the Muscatine County Watershed Association, a donation request. I have a motion to open our discussion on that.
Motion to open discussion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There's a letter here. I didn't see. I don't know if there was something I missed. Did they have a specific dollar amount they were requesting?
That was it, just the.
Yeah, I didn't know. So either.
Yeah, so Muscatine County Watershed Association thing, do we know what we did in 2019? I think I know what we did, but I
500.
thought it was 500. So the Muscatine County Watershed Association does a river cleanup. Now, we do support the Raritan Headwaters when they do their river cleanup. So that apparently on April 16th, they had 249 volunteers, collected a total of 164 bags of trash and 11 tires and several truckloads of larger items like couches, lawn furniture, car parts. Within the jurisdiction of Bethlehem, it appears that they collected 10 bags of trash, 6 bags of recyclables, and that's it. No tires, no large items, thankfully. But again, we haven't supported them in 2019. I think it's a worthy project. We also work with Muscatine on a lot of other initiatives. So I would make the recommendation that we support them at the level of $500.
Make a motion to support the delivery of $500.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Well, roll call vote, please.
Keith is excused. Lindsay,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Randolph,
Yes.
Muir.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a worthy contribution.
No, why we stopped?
I do not know why we stopped. It may have been in 2020. If they did get the other, haven't followed up. Or
Yeah, I guess COVID
just
just
did
did
it. Possible. Discussion item to submit an application for the survey of gypsy moth egg masses. Kind of motion open.
Make a motion open.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There's a letter here. I don't think we're wrong. I don't think we've ever accepted this.
No.
Because obviously, Tom, I don't give any input. If it opens us up to, it just never seems worthwhile. There's probably associated cost of remediation once we find. Survey's free, cleanup's not. Comments or?
We have substantial problems in town. I know it's rural.
Also,
See too much.
also letter said was they noticed.
The letter says that for the past 10, I think it's the same letter and it changed. the date.
That's been detected.
I don't want to influence one way or the other. It sounds like I have been.
So you want motion to decline this?
I think it's prudent to decline.
I'll make that motion that we decline this offer. For the survey.
A motion to decline, you said? I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to close that discussion. Motion to close the discussion.
Motion to close discussion.
Second.
That does require you to do it.
Yeah, but that patterns come throughout the year now.
So this one's the one I'm most excited about because I missed the 2 meetings. Deputy Mayor's gonna smack me over here. We're resuming 2 township meetings per month, effective September 1st. Can I have a motion to open for discussion on this?
I'll make that motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
So now that the summers are always kind of quiet, but we're getting back towards the end of the year, starting to plan already for 2023. There's stormwater management, some other issues that I'll bring up that we need to deal with. I think it's prudent, but I'm open to
I was the one who said during the summer it was okay once a month. It's okay.
And it worked out well.
Yes, it did. People were gonna be gone. So,
In all probability, it makes sense to go back to meetings, the school's opening up, we have issues that come down the pipe, we got so many more things, the public needs access to us, and not just that, but we've got bills tracking all those finances. So,
So you're saying 4 meetings?
we can do 4, and then we just need at least 3 to show up.
Okay, so can I have a motion to return to 2 meetings per month?
I'll make the motion to turn to meetings month and be the first and the third Thursdays at 7:30.
yes.
There you go.
57.
I would be okay with that. That's
Fifty-seven?
second discussion.
I mean, I go 7:15.
It's
We
okay.
can go earlier if we
It's
want.
okay, it's
I
okay.
still give 7:30.
No matter how fast you get on the limits. Let's get it 7:30. I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion to close discussion.
Make the motion, to close the discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Discussion regarding the Lee Farmhouse, tarping of the structure. Can I have a motion open?
Motion open.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And for this discussion, I will hand over to the mayor.
Yeah, I figured as much. So the backstory is on the Bleak Farmhouse, which is the house that butts up to Heritage Park. The barns have unfortunately had to come down. They became beyond repair. It became a hazard. I've taken it upon myself to take an interest in this property and maybe turn it into some sort of cultural center. I feel it's worth exploring what we could do with the house and turn it into, I mean, Heritage Park is our de facto kind of town square here. But the house is deteriorating, and it's deteriorating rapidly. There are some holes in the roofs that have developed this year. We have started exploring some numbers as to what it might take to start to get some consulting in, to renovate the home, to what it would take to turn it into a little museum or a cultural center for people to come and listen to maybe music, look at local artists. I've been talking about this for some time. But right now, step one would be to have to stop the deterioration as best we can from this point forward, because those holes in the roofs I've been in the home, Carl's been in the home, and there's starting to be mold. There is some water damage due to the holes in the roof. So Carl, you can correct me. I think it would take about, is it $2,600? I'm not remembering, give or take,
Between 25 to 3,000.
to tarp the home, shore it up for now until we decide if we would like to renovate it. If we do at some point take it down, I would kind of like to take it to the residents at some point to see what they would like to do with it and turning it into something. But we do have an immediate problem. There have been some other opinions out there, but until we get to this point, I'd like to turn it over to the committee to discuss, do we tarp it for now, spend the money until we decide what to do with that property? And that's kind of where we're at. So between 2,600, I guess not to exceed $3,000, not to exceed $3,000, put some heavy duty tarps on it. And it's not like you can just send, right, Carl, you can't just send somebody up there and nail it on the roof. That's not safe.
False is the man.
Yeah, the lift that it's gonna take to physically do that. So that's where we're at, and that's what I'm asking the committee tonight to discuss, if there's any discussion or public discussion on this expenditure.
I mean, I know we did get money back from FEMA, but I had out there, so I'm not too concerned there, but how would tarping, would it protect this out? Would it help it till we get a decision? I mean, Carl asked you, you've been in there.
It just depends on how long it's started for.
Yeah,
I mean, Mr. Decker would know better than.
It's gonna hold up to a snowstorm, or if you get snow, and you put tarp back with that weight on the structure, which isn't there.
Well, certainly better than what. is
Right,
there.
right.
To back up, though, we did have a structural engineer look at the property.
Yeah, as far as structurally, the bones of the structure are in pretty decent shape. There was some some shoring up done a few years ago in the basement to shore up the floor joists and everything. So structurally, it's not in horrible shape. You know, there's a lot of stuff interior that has to be done in the roof. But, you know, structurally, it's okay. Tarping it, I think, would at least, you know, help with any of the moisture and everything getting in there. To your question about the snow load, typically with a tarp, it's a slicker surface, so the snow typically will slide off more than accumulate as it would, say, on an asphalt roof or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's a nice idea to look into. I don't think it's something we can, you know, be spending thousands and thousands of dollars on. We did have grants for the barn, apparently there are grants that we can look into for the house.
I was just saying, I think from my perspective is that I'd like to see as little local taxpayer dollars, because all these grants eventually come from us somehow, but at least our own budget dollars going towards this and finding alternatives. You know, we looked at, you know, historic trust grants, which are not available based on the fact that it doesn't have its historic registry, but it doesn't preclude from other grants. There may be community grants, there may be council for the arts grants that we haven't looked at.
There might be
We'll look at something
historical
else.
grants. I'm gonna look into Highlands to see if there's something there.
Typically, they like to see for history a registry, but there might be some private foundations that may not be as concerned if we know what the intent is. So I think in the short term, I think we have to make a decision when we look at 2023's budget as to what we're really going to do with this. But for the short term, if it has a possibility, I think it's worth at least targeting and then making a decision based on the work on the 2023 budget. Is there something that's viable within the next 18 months? Because that's all the parks are going to value, in my opinion, at that, and then make a decision as to whether it's viable. It'd be wonderful to have. I mean, I think some of the conversations are not, I'm not going to say that they're broad and overwhelming, but a lot of the conversations, you know, Heritage Park, and we talk about being geared towards children's, you know, sports and things, but it's a recreational place for everybody. So if this house provides another cultural or recreational opportunity for various organizations, whether the seniors can use it, whether our historic society gets more active using that versus the old municipal building, whether the environmental commission has an open public display space, even to talk about the environment and the river, town park, it opens up those possibilities. So I think it's worth in the short term saving it so that we have those options. And when we finally come to the conclusion that it's not, you know, viable, make that decision, but work hard to find ways to save it.
Yeah, and that process has been started, you know, with just the very minimal cost that we have as a structural engineer, but there have been other things that I have been doing behind the scenes to get opinions. I've been with Carl, thanks to Carl, in the home itself to see, and there is space in there, yeah, that we could definitely use it for, and there's a nice fireplace up on the second floor. Bathroom, from a health code perspective, looks like it would be, it's in decent shape, so I'd like to buy some time. I don't want to influence anybody though.
Well, on my end, I look at it as potential money pit. It's been here for a lot of time, which means there's been a lot of renovations with all the different technologies over decades and multiple decades. The tarp, I'm not here to be a wet blanket up on it. If it buys us some time because you want to really flesh this out, the community wants to size this up. I look at the house mostly ready to collapse to begin with. So if we're looking for, it's just an observation. That's why I'm phrasing it in that context.
Yeah, I get it.
You want to take this in steps, and public's okay with that, we're okay with that, to size up what our options are. But mindful of the fact that who knows what cans of worms are hiding behind that last layer of sheetrock or paneling and everything else that goes with that footprint, that we may not have any coverage on. We're already looking at these other potential out-of-pocket expenses from the state, and there is a limit to what the public can afford when they're getting hit from so many directions. So I'd say if we're preserving it to do a good size up, we should have a good plan on that size up at a time frame, and have a hard idea as best we can, of course, where the money's going to come from, because otherwise we're halfway through this thing, now we're on the hook for remediations and every other thing, and ultimately we end up with just a pile of stuff. Whereas you brought up an interesting thing about having some place that's culturally tied to the town's history, and it is one of the oldest towns in the state. Do we take it down, we create pervious surface, we have a whole new percentage as far as what's in the park, we actually put something that represents that historical value, ties in all the things that we want to do, but it also gives us the options, whether it's entertaining or ability for people to meet instead of coming up here, they actually are in the park in a year-round type of setting. So just throw that out there. So I'm not opposed to this idea if that's what the committee wants to do.
Well, I agree, and I think that's kind of what the committee was looking at, is, hey, let's see if the house is salvageable. Unfortunately, with everything going on, perfect, and if it is, okay, if not, then we're gonna have to pay for, tearing down and tearing up the space. And then maybe if option B would be, as Art had said, maybe put something else there instead. I think right now, if we don't do anything to it, the whole time we're spending, the house is gonna be more damaged and it'll be more of an
We're
issue.
gonna spend the money taking it out anyway, that we had to do with Florence.
Make a motion.
Why don't you tear it down and just put low income housing?
Well, excuse me, you want to make a motion?
Sure.
We'll open the public.
Yeah, you can- you can answer it.
That's representation.
I mean,
Motion for public.
So I'll make a motion. to open the public
Do
comment.
I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There we go.
Just state your name and address.
Kirsten Maddox, for the Crossman Road. And, we want to tear it down, take it down and put low income housing. Meet the affordable requirements.
We do have a approved plan for the home next to the park.
I think that'd be
Existing.
awesome.
We just need to find somebody willing to build it.
I think I can find something.
We'll talk about it. We did, we went out for bid a couple of years ago, and there's some issues with water requirements, at least for that proposal. Doesn't preclude other proposals. Well,
How old is it over?
Is it
the
the building
building
structure?
form, so it's like 1950s. But it's older than
that. No,
No, it's older than that. There's been a. go
Yeah,
ahead,
I just
Paul.
said it's probably 1890s.
The original, there was
two.
an addition put on, there's some dispute on some of the dates, the addition is somewhere around that, between 1940s, maybe early 50s, but the original part of the home does date back to at least, the early 1800s.
There's we found at least three
Yeah.
other structures in town that were built almost identical. They're private homes right now, so it was a building style, obviously in the at least mid 1800s, for the initial portion of the house.
I guess I would like to see public input. Like your suggestion.
And there is, people forget, Captain Daniel Leake was a Revolutionary War soldier. There is a family, it's on the private property adjacent to the farm, but there is a family cemetery
Is that being maintained? I know the Boy Scouts
I know.
like that.
I think after the initial cleanup, I did not think it's been maintained after that, which is a shame.
Well, that would be a nice thing to keep maintained.
Of course it
I
is.
thought the house was older than this. 'Cause I think I was in that house.
I don't know, the structure report,
I went to
date
school
on.
when it first in the house. Years ago.
The other house, I do believe is older, it's on the
maybe-
other side of the
There's
road,
two.
yeah. That's
One
still privately
brick one,
owned.
right?
Yeah.
It's not, so it's not the brick.
No, it's the.
No,
it's the wood
it's the one
structure.
directly behind the park.
The cemetery property of the house.
No, that's the difficulty. The cemetery is on private property next to a park. So they granted access for the Eagle Scout project and the ceremony, but it's not open to the public.
Well, maybe you could get access to the
Easement
township.
or-
Maybe.
I mean, when we were thinking about saving the barn, we were hoping to then make that part of the whole complex.
Yeah, that was the original plan.
So the barn that you're gonna do the wedding venues in or something, that's.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, that came down in February with a snowstorm, just as, yeah. That was very unfortunate.
Was anyone able to save any of the wood?
We saved the cupola. The cupola is kind of sitting sort of on the side of the park. We're hopefully, maybe we can get somebody to maybe even volunteer their time to at least restore that and use it as some sort of, I don't want to say monument's probably not the right word, but some sort of
Recognize
display.
The barn was 1760, from what we could tell. And it did have a lot of historic value, so I think just recognize it through
Yeah.
the cupola, that would be helpful.
And thanks to Carl and actually the excavators, we were able to save some of the beams They're still kind of sitting back there from the barn that we think are somewhat viable, that maybe at some point we could do something. Because some of them were still in good shape that probably could be repurposed as mantles or, anything you wanna do.
Company, maybe,
I'm sorry?
maybe you could sell them to the barn company.
Yeah, I looked into that actually before the barn came down to see if there were some barn companies that might have wanted to come in and actually do something with it, but yeah, that's a possibility. Or local artisans who might want to come and take it and repurpose it, we'll see. But there's a nice sized pile back there. We're just kind of waiting for it to be a little more safe for people to go back there, because there's still some debris. Although they did a great job of cleaning it up, I still don't want the public going back there. There's still a lot of broken glass and stuff.
As we look at the attorney. So do you want to make the motion to not to exceed?
Make a motion to tarp the house not to exceed $3,000.
Do I have a second? Can I roll call vote, please?
Mr. Keith is excused. Lindsay,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Randolph,
Yes.
Muir.
Yes. Motion carries.
Did you close public comment?
No, I was gonna, give it a follow-up comment.
No.
Okay, so I was gonna have a motion.
Called you.
No, I was ready.
She
after
knows the
vote. I
process
really
better
was.
than you.
No. I was gonna ask for a motion to close both public comment and the discussion.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second? I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
And our final discussion under new business, proposed amendment to the township parking ordinance. Remember motion to open?
Make a motion open.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So I know we have some people joining us, I think both on Zoom and in person, but before we open, what I think I'm gonna look at Ms. Mishko, what we were discussing with Mr. Ogrodnik. So we have an issue that's come up in a development about parking on the roadways. The township does have an ordinance specifying no parking on the roadways, but it does not specify what roads, and it needs to be enforceable once we spoke to the state police. So what I would like to see, we've talked about, is just doing a blanket, just have to go back to the planning board, but doing a blanket amendment to this ordinance, stating that there would be no parking of trailers, equipment. We'll go through the proper process. I'm not saying this is the end all be all, maybe with a 48-hour window, because again, I keep sharing we're a rural community. So if somebody's going away with a camper and they want to load it 2 nights before they go, or they have ATVs or dirt bikes they want to put on trailers or something, I think we should give people some leeway there. But long-term, leaving them on the roads is the question or the problem we're trying to solve. So I think that's our path forward. Probably the next planning board meeting, if the board sees fit here, we'll start the process, because we need to introduce something to get passed by the end of the year. So we can't carry ordinance approval year to year. So that's the intent. Any questions from our own committee first about? And then you have a motion open for public comment.
Make a motion open for public comment.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
So motion for our public comment on just this topic.
I guess Gary Lindgren again from 22 Deliver Road. I'm the president of our homeowners association, which is what's at Foxfront. The context around this is we do have a covenants that says you can't park boats and trailers on your property, even though the township says you can if it's in a certain position. And we have a couple of homeowners that have done that on a regular basis over the years. And recently they decided that since the community doesn't have any jurisdiction over the streets, they're just going to park there. It's really storing their boats and trailers on the street for extended periods of time. They've got homes and.
We almost ran into one.
Yeah, we almost ran into it tonight coming
This
here.
is in the middle of the road with the cones further out in the middle of the road. So it's, in our opinion, it's a safety hazard. We have kids, we have bikes, we have narrow roads, so you can't possibly pass one another.
Again, I don't know if they ever message, but Trooper Lombardi is still on the call, but I did reach out to Trooper Walsh, who was one of our representatives, and asked him to patrol and check. And so that's my concern. So I would say if you see something far enough out on the road, so right now, from an ordinance standpoint, we don't believe that our ordinance is strong enough to enforce something on the road. But any of those vehicles, equipment, anything, they need to be properly registered and insured, and they cannot be a safety hazard and too far off the curb or impede impasse for emergency vehicles. So that's what I've asked the state police to check every once in a while, to go out and make sure that that's what's enforceable at this point, is the registration, insurance, and how they're parked, until we can get this done. And
I don't know if like a fire truck could have gotten past that.
yeah, that's a concern to me, if that's the case.
Like a cop car, yes, not a fire.
I'm worried about the fire trucks and ambulances going past. And that's a big concern.
Yeah,
So I will reiterate that to the trooper.
Yeah, and is there something should we call the state?
I was saying, because you're there, like,
Yes.
you could share with me, I'll call and follow up, and I'll,
Okay.
but please call their non-emergency number first.
Right,
And
yeah, I don't want to come
yeah, so they have I give it to you after the meeting, but even if you Google it, there's a
Separate running to the Perryville
yeah,
Barracks.
730, like, I think it's 9600, but I'll check it. I'll check the barriers. And they will,
Just a question, what roadways are we discussing?
the township roads.
Okay,
And we
so
would
it
have
has nothing to do with farmland.
No, and when we get into the planning board, I'm gonna assume there's gonna be some discussions about
Okay.
certain farms and certain roads, because again, we are a rural community, so for, hay wagons and any other kind of equipment trailers will be, I think the biggest issue is gonna be in the developments. They're tighter roads, a little more dense. So when I say a blanket, we're looking to fix a problem, but there's gonna be some caveats as to what it covers and where.
So their homeowners association doesn't allow boats or trailers on your property?
Correct.
So then what should people do?
Well, they know that before they move in, so they have to make arrangements to put them someplace else.
So rent.
Rent a space at one of the storage areas, dock the boats.
A
Is
lot of,
that true for all?
no, but there are quite a few. Actually, the one where I live does too. Typically, most I would say they were Toll Brothers developments. They did it when they were selling the home. Initially, I would say, protect their sales presentation, if you will. But a lot of them decided to keep it, and it's part of the deed. And if a new owner comes in during attorney review, they're supposed to share with them that it's a part of the deed, that you can't have these things. There's a lot of various restrictions. Some like are non-existent anymore, like TV antennas. I mean, my house is old enough now, it's kind of restricted. Yeah, they're probably all the same.
So just so I understand, you're discussing a blanket ordinance with regard to parking
Just
on
repark.
any street in the township of Bethlehem
Yes.
with disregard of homeowners association or what has to do with. So how can we define that?
That's what we're gonna do on the planning board.
Okay. So you're not making a ruling tonight?
No, it's just a discussion that the committee is amenable to sending this to the planning board, tasking them with doing something before the end of the year to bring because we already have an ordinance on the books. So you can look at it and it defines a lot of things. It really just doesn't it never specifies the road. So like when we put weight limits or speed limits, we have to say what road they are. So we already have this ordinance, but it doesn't specify any road. So it's therefore not enforceable. It's not written to say a blanket, it's written to say, these are regulations that are enforceable on, such and such road based on zoning and legal interpretation. So once we either plug in the names of those roads or do it based on certain zones, and again, we're looking to allow certain things, whether it's a time limit, even on residential areas or on areas that are predominantly rural or agricultural for equipment. Really, the key is the safety. I mean, that's my concern, like you just brought up, regardless of anything else. If you can't get an ambulance or a fire truck, that's a problem.
So what happens if the state trooper comes out and sees a trailer? What do they do?
Issue
Put a ticket?
a ticket.
Yeah, especially if it's blocking. So they just put a ticket on the windshield of the trailer
It's
or
like
whatever,
parking
and then the next day another ticket and the next day another ticket.
Eventually it ends up,
And I'm assuming that there are a lot more trailers than boats since COVID, because everyone's doing staycations and.
We only have two specific families or homeowners that are trying to, they're not allowed to park in the driveway, so we park on the street. It's
Yeah,
kind of like, okay, you don't want to park in the driveway, I'll park it even further out somewhere else.
The problem is the boats actually never go in the water. They just sit there. Day after day.
For months, since May.
They have never been in the water. They just sit there. It's like, why do you even have a boat?
It's not a status, trust me, not.
Well, and clearly you, if another car was coming the other way, you can't pass.
Yeah.
And it really
And they
is,
don't see it.
it's not safe. If we had snow plowing happening, I'm always concerned that the postal delivery people can even make it. Some of these are parking near their mailbox. I mean, it's really not, it's very much regard for what's appropriate.
So we do ticket actually, like you bring up snow, because there is an out if it's a snow emergency. The state police can ticket and tow that vehicle, and it's up to them once we alert them to it. So it would be the same as this. They would ticket it, and if it's just staying there and or it's a hazard on the road, it's gonna get towed.
Not to believe it is, but like if, again, trying to be not onerous on residents in general, I could see, it being a popular thing to have trailers and boats. Can homeowners association rules ever change to allow them on the property?
So it's up.
We can amend, we can amend the.
So this owner could come to you, these owners could come to you.
Sure, we
with
could,
an
we
order.
would collect it.
So that is a possibility.
Oh, sure.
Oh, absolutely, but nobody in the town, in our town, in Raleigh Township, in our development, there's 33 homes, there's only 2 that are doing this. The other 31 don't want anything to do with it, and they're calling us every day, asking us to do something about it. And these guys are not abiding by the rules, so.
Where is this?
It's in
Fox Farm,
Fox Farm, it's in Fox Farm.
Right on the Fox Farm, Willever, Swayze,
One of them.
Cornish, Farrow.
It's a total.
Mr. Jones, I think you have some experience in this area.
I mean, I just will throw this out there, with the concerns that are out there, if the vehicle, the trailer, or whatever else isn't registered and it's parked on the road, state police can issue summonses and they can even tow and pound that off there, so if they have a trailer out there, no license plate, state police can write summons to the owner of the trailer and can tow it, they're not supposed to have, it should be about parking or on the roadway.
There's actually a state ordinance that says if a car is parked on.
Yeah, Title 39.
72 hours, that you can call it in as a ban.
That's a little more tougher. right
I
now.
understand that, I understand.
Because you can call it in as a ban.
I'm not
There's
suggesting
lots of
you
liability.
do that.
It's more private property than it is on there.
I'm sorry?
That's more for private property. You're gonna tow the vehicle. You're not gonna see the
No,
town
it's
take a
not, it's not,
liability.
it's public
I'm saying not
roads.
gonna see the town take a liability of having a car towed or pounded.
I understand, but it's on public, it states on public roads.
For us, for state police, just going through this with the state police, they would make the decision for the tow.
Yeah.
So you can inform them and let them make that call.
We'd rather just amend the ordinance, I think that's the.
I think it's also prudent, we're not looking to be, overbearing, so when it goes to the planning board, we will review and make sure it's most appropriate for Bethlehem Township and the various neighborhoods that may or may not be impacted by that.
So that will be this year's planning board?
We're hoping to get that done, we're hoping to get that done this year, because it's an amendment, so essentially there would probably be a couple, I'm gonna say, like I said, caveats as far as hours and locations, and then just plugging in whatever language it is, we make it a blanket, or we do it based on certain classes of roads. And that way it's enforceable, especially for just going into the winter. Like I said, once we're in an emergency state, we do have other options, but on a regular basis, I'm concerned if you can't get emergency vehicles past there. Any other public comment on this topic?
How big are the roads?
Okay.
Yeah, how big?
How wide?
How big and how wide?
It's probably as wide as a pickup truck and as long or longer than the pickup truck. And it's a big pickup truck too. So you not just have a boat, but you also have a pickup truck parked there as well.
Because you can't just leave the trailer.
The road is about a standard 50 feet, which I think it has to be. And the truck and the boat take up at least half of that.
And you've got to the homeowners or like?
And they're like,
Months to try to do it nicely.
And they don't want to be. We don't have any jurisdiction over it, so we can't force them to do anything.
So
You would think,
You would think,
You would think.
You would.
Motion to close public comment,
Motion to close public comment.
Second.
in favor? Motion to send this and request that the planning board amend the parking ordinance as quickly as possible.
Make a motion. As stated.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye. And so we have a planning board meeting Monday night. We'll discuss, it won't be on the agenda.
It won't be on the agenda
Kind of
for
give
this
them a heads
Monday
up
night.
that for the next,
Yeah.
we'll start working on that. And we'll look at the timeframes, because when we introduce an ordinance, they have to review it, send it up here. We introduce it, it goes back to them to determine whether that it's not inconsistent with our master plan. It's 45 days after that for our public hearing, so we need to back it, we need to get it done before December. So we will do our best to make sure that that schedule is met. We appreciate that.
Thank you. We'll be happy.
Report of the zoning official, there's a paper report of permits issued, not violations, it's just the issue permits. Report of Department of Public Works. In here, so Mr. Roth, you're on the spot if you're.
Spotlight's on.
Last month, we painted all the yellow lines on the township roads. We swept all the developments. We did some road chipping on a couple of.
Sorry, I can't, can you're,
I can't really understand what you're saying.
Just you're gonna speak louder, you're gonna stand up, but
We chipped brush on a couple of roads. We did some roadside mowing. We paved Iron Bridge Road from the bridge up to the school. We mowed the parks along with the municipal building. And we got ready to work on phase 2 of Iron Bridge. Did some equipment repairs. And I want to say happy birthday to Tom. The township engineer. That was on August 10th.
Thanks, Carl.
He wanted to sing.
happy birthday, Tom.
Yeah, thanks.
I think I will say, I know we've shared before, but Carl, to you and the entire crew and Tom as the engineer, Iron Bridge turned out excellent. The conditions are, I don't know how to describe them from a construction standpoint, but for those of you who are familiar with Iron Bridge, to be able to pave that is quite the project. So excellent job. I know it's continuing on, but at least this portion is a little better.
Yeah, we had some truck drivers that did not return.
That's part of my favorite story. They came and they left. So. They know it's a good project. And again, that was a DOT project, so thank them for funding that. And the animal control official, it was an email report. A report of township attorney.
I should have a litigation update that was requested at the last meeting, so here we are. This is ADS Environmental versus Bethlehem Township and the Planning Board. The appellate division came out with a decision on August 16th, where they agreed with our position. And let's see, oral argument was on March 15th of this year. This matter had stemmed from a action in the law division where it named the township and the planning board as defendants, seeking to reverse the planning board's decision, finding that ADS's proposed use of the property for a concrete batch plant trucking facility was abandoned and required a variance. And the complaint was seeking equitable relief against the township, finding that the township and the board are stopped from denying ADS its approvals because of the issuance of a CCO by the construction official and the former township attorney when ADS closed the property. So in short, the appellate division held that the trial court erred by considering the issue of equitable estoppel against the township without a full record. The trial court basically made its decision on wrong facts, to put it blankly. And that constituted an abuse of the court's discretion, and it is now remanded back to the trial court for basically a rehearing on the issues. There's a note about zoning violations. Any complaints from the public regarding the non-permitted trucking operations will be addressed in the municipal court. So that is a separate action for those issues. question.
So I think my understanding too is our previous township attorney decided to bifurcate this case, which was part of the problem. And so while it's being remanded back to the court, they're gonna eliminate or waive or take back the bifurcation, which will allow us to then present additional evidence and not just go on planning board record. So it's very advantageous to us. And thank you, Mr. Ogrodnik and Ms. Kaczynski for their work in correcting the legal issues, and then in their briefs this year when they asked for amendments and coming out with this positive result. So,
There's two other smaller issues. We had received a notice of tort claim for a driver injured on Route 78 after striking a boulder causing serious injury.
separate from ADS.
But we anticipate that to be dismissed against the township since that is not a road controlled by the township. And then there's another issue which I'm actually not really familiar with, unless the committee wants to discuss it. Agricultural access request for a township right away easement.
We're still working on that. So
Okay.
we can wait on that. I think we're waiting for some documents from the property owner to figure out what the easement really is.
Okay, sure.
Any questions for the attorney? Thank you. Report of personnel affected the sport coordinator, Chris Nelson.
Okay, so I'm gonna steal a little bit from probably Jen's update when we get to the administrator, but we've been going through our personnel manual from an HR perspective and making sure all the staff understands and complies with within that manual and continuing to hold personnel reviews. And basically adhering to what's in the manual. As from an IT standpoint up here at the building and in the township at large, I actually don't really have much to report, which is a good thing. After we have had a very busy first 6 months of the year.
We've corrected and addressed all.
We have corrected and addressed, I think, pretty much, unless, Jen, there's anything I'm unaware of, we are pretty well smooth sailing up here now. After all of the moving around and remapping of everything that we've done up here, and again, I've thanked the staff before, but thank you for your patience through all that. And that's it.
Excellent. Any questions for Ms. Nelson? Okay,
Can I just ask a quick question? The last subject your attorney referenced with regard to the farmland, what, does that have to do with my property?
No. Report of roads coordinator, Mr. Keefe is not here. Ms. Nelson, you're the alternate, or Mr. Roth, anything else you'd like to add to the report?
No, I'm
Okay,
good.
very good.
Carl did a great job.
Report of joint professional service coordinator, that's myself. I have no report for this evening. Report of Highlands Council coordinator, Ms. Nelson.
No updates as of now. I'm still gonna pursue those grants, so let's see what we've been talking about tonight.
Thank you.
Yep.
Report of health and safety coordinator, Mr. Lenzi.
Had a meeting with Bob Gemmell from the insurance company, again, myself, you were there as well. Carl, you were there to discuss updating our several years ago, we had the insurance company in play, where they went to the building, make sure everything was on par to prevent injury, prevent that sort of things. Kind of went through here as a practice exercise. As you can see, you have these nice rubber straps over the wires because they're sort of tripping hazards. We had discussed about the one back room there, the arm panel room, moving some of the equipment out of the way so you can have access to the arm panels. We're going to go forward now with it. So already checking out the park once the weather cools down. I think the day we met like 95 degrees, so we didn't want to go out there. And basically what happens is it's just sort of common sense sort of thing, putting out there, making sure everything's salted properly, make sure the DPW gets the proper training they're required to have per the insurance company. One thing we realized is there are some POSHA issues that we had to handle that are now taken care of in regards to the hepatitis vaccine essentially. So those are getting taken care of, and we're just going to continue to sort of build back up this plan that we had that went away a few years ago to bring the town within compliance for the insurance company.
Yeah, so even safety, but some of the cyber attacks were part of the conversation too. And I don't anticipate this in today's world. At one point, when our safety committee was active, we actually received almost a $5,000 rebate from the activities of the safety committee. Maybe we get back to that point again by taking these steps and bringing them back to action. Our insurance policy keeps going up. A lot of it actually is the cyber attack insurance portion of it, but the more that we can do, the better we can protect tax dollars by making sure that we are protecting ourselves, our staff, and anybody who comes on municipal property.
Another thing which I'll bring up now, so I'll bring it up later is, we may as a committee, the town need to look into Pattenberg Fire. Speaking with Union OEM, speaking with Alexander OEM, there's some serious concerns about their abilities to be able to provide the coverage that we expected them, that we're paying for them. They apparently already told them that they're looking to go other places. From what I heard today, apparently they have now 4 trucks, or no, 4 members and 2 trucks, 4 active members and 2 trucks at the moment. That's a serious.
We have not issued any payment to Pattenberg Fire, correct? Okay, so obviously it's something we need to address sooner than later because it's a significant.
I believe Alexandria is already discussing going to Quakertown. Unions is already discussing using Quakertown. Apparently there's been more issues going on at Pattenberg Fire. We get more talk, but something we need to explore.
So if I could request that we could have, say, more definitive plan by the September 1st meeting, for more information.
I'm still waiting for Pattenberg Fire's update for emergency operation plans, what they have. They haven't gotten back to me yet. I'll tell you what they have, because they're supposed to film it.
I'm not unaware. My concern for Bethlehem is the area that Pattenberg serves. Maybe Alexandria is comfortable. Union has no issue with Quakertown, I believe, in response time. I'll look at part. I know you work with them all. I have concerns about, I think Quakertown is a phenomenal organization. I have concerns about the response time to the coverage area that Pattenberg Fire does. So I think, we need to look at Bloomsbury Fire to see if they have the capacity to then cover that if that becomes an issue that we need to replace coverage. But it's a concern because they really do fill a hole that right now is a bit of a void for the larger fire companies that are around them. And like I said, every town is a phenomenal organization. We can figure out some way to invite them. But right now, based on where they are, I think the response times would not be acceptable. I'm just trying to test my concern. Otherwise, I would say we could even take, at least have a better plan going into it, knowing that who our backup would be. I just think we have concerns about who can actually do that.
For time's sake, for expedience, the normal protocol is an agency is called out. After a certain period of time, it goes to mutual aid. In this particular case, it's mutual aid on the initial dispatch. So you can get whatever their primary service area is, they're toned out, and they already have figured out which agency is appropriate for that particular area within the footprint they're supposed to cover.
Thank you.
They're trying to cover that gap, but it is difficult.
Thank you for sharing that, because I was going to ask for residents that do know there are concerns. It's been that way for a few months now, that when Pattenberg receives a call from the communications, it goes to another agency at the same time. So there is another agency coming too. So, that's
Right, the term for that would be a dual load.
that's a.
How have they been with you guys in crashes up on 78 for rescue? I heard one complaint.
Some of you might know I'm on Pattenberg Rescue Squad. Matter of fact, I wrote last night. It's a unique situation because since we're generally staffed 24 hours a day.
Right.
Very often, we're even on scene before the state police. So we're owning whatever the disaster is. A lot of times, fire departments are responding because they bring a big piece of equipment that can block off a section of the highway. If nothing else, it's a moving barrier. And if anything subsequent to the initial crash turns into an extrication, we need extra body, extra equipment. We have to wait, and it does affect those medical concerns that golden hour, the 60 minutes to get a critically injured person out and on their way into a facility. Well, we're served by great hospitals, St. Louis Bethlehem, St. Louis Anderson, Morristown. We've got agency locations in our reach, and we can get our hands tied on trying to get out. To that end, we also have pretty often where Station 36, which is in Clinton, will automatically send on the initial report of a potentially serious crash. They'll start rolling your equipment. The downside of that is it's a lot of wear and tear. Keep rolling, and then you get there, sometimes you cancel halfway. We're still going through that cycle. We're adapting the best we can. The highway is its own unique beast, and we navigate.
That's it. Thank you for sharing that. And well, obviously, it's a concern that we keep monitoring and take whatever actions necessary. Report finance coordinator, Ms. Nelson.
Well, as you see, we've been trying to be as prudent as possible with the budget and some of these projects that we want to get going. Jen and I are in constant contact regarding how to best spend some of the money, but right now I think we're in pretty good shape.
So we started the year very tight. We remain tight, but we're staying within the budget.
Yep.
So our tax collections, the first quarter.
Yeah, they're doing
almost 100%.
99.1%.
So I thank the residents, but our tax collector has also been reaching out and doing his job. So anyway, I think we're doing the best we can with what we have.
Yep.
And again,
Land use.
land use.
No, we've been talking a lot about land use tonight. Little board that's getting respect. In addition to what looks like it's going to be coming down the pike on all the discussions tonight with 9 ordinances from the Tier A, with what we just sent down on the parking ordinance to land use, there is also from the last, and actually I wasn't at the last meeting, so Paul, you may need to help me out here. The tree ordinance, which has been kicked around for decades, is in its final throes. Land use, I do believe, and again, you can help out a little here, did kind of approve the changes the committee made to it, specifically the hardship clause.
So what I think they did, I hope this is, I'm looking at Mr. Lanza, you know, I brought it up, but I'm hoping it's amenable. So part of the new proposed tree ordinance is there are fees for taking down trees, and then there's some replanting requirements if you take down a certain number of trees. You can take down 5 every year without anything. And if they're diseased or dead, you don't need anything either. So
Or non-native.
yeah, so yes, so
The whole thing was to preserve the healthy trees.
it's pretty open. It was really geared towards steep slopes and water runoff issues that we have here in Bethlehem. But the concern was brought up about financial hardship, and you know the town's not really under the ability to then gauge whether somebody's going to come and say I can't afford the fees for these trees, but we still want to be respectful. So with the planning board and discussions, and I think it's prudent. We were thinking, well, what if somebody has financial hardship? In what circumstance are they taking down trees? So don't come to us saying you're taking down 11 trees to put up a swimming pool, you have financial hardship. So what the language we were going to put in rather than a percentage, because we were worried about developers, different things, is the hardship would only apply to septic systems.
And that, yeah, and I don't want to get ahead of it, but I don't know if you saw your email today, but it did come back and the clause is in there.
Okay.
And I do believe it pretty much captures what the committee wanted.
Okay.
Yeah, upon my first read. I haven't read it completely in depth, but yeah, on first read, it seems.
That would probably be the most reason
Yeah.
that somebody would have, because they would be forced to put in a septic at that point, or replace their septic.
Right.
Take down trees. If you're putting an addition on your home or an accessory structure or swimming pool, like, we couldn't think of any reason that somebody would be taking down a number of trees that would, you know, include financial hardship. So that's where the thought process went. So that it is in there to protect homeowners who are in a situation that would be forced to take down trees, and others, you know.
Yeah.
And again, it really does impact just the small swath of homeowners in town, and it's geared towards the runoff.
Yeah, and you know, like I said, they're sending it back to us, so not exactly sure when I go on our agenda, actually, I guess for final adoption.
Not yet.
And that will be big because 15 years, 20
Yes.
years
Yeah,
in the
at
making.
least 15 years.
Government expediency, what can I say? Also discussed at the last meeting was, I think, Paul, this I saw where you actually had some concerns on our animal ordinance, maybe wanting a little bit more.
Sure.
So constraints around right now, it's pretty wide open.
Yeah, so last year, in last July, I believe, there was some concerns about our animal ordinance and chickens, what you can have and can't have. So the committee decided to just get rid of I would say essentially get rid of pretty much every regulation within the animal control ordinance.
Yes.
the pre-existing ordinance had regulations as per the Rutgers Agricultural School, so it was really geared towards, how many horses per acre, more for the health of the animal and water, stormwater, or not stormwater, water runoff and water conditions.
Right.
So I will give Chairman Chalet a lot of credit because he said I disagreed with it. And he said, give me the year and I will make sure I bring it up. And he did bring it up. And we haven't had any significant complaints about anything. So we decided to take no action at this point. But when we look at the tier A, we may need to look at that
Yeah.
ordinance as well.
Feeding of
because-
wildlife, all of that stuff is
Yeah,
gonna come into play
Because
with
it's,
this
it's
ordinance.
mostly the feces from any agricultural animal that we need to then,
Mhm.
just we need to record and check bacteria levels and everything else. So it may become a moot point as far as our decision if these tier A's are upheld, and we're gonna have to put
Right.
a lot of those pieces back into the ordinance.
But they can hit bottles.
Right now you can.
You can have a hippopotamus.
So,
Did you-
I the
I like that joke.
the key that I really want to bring up though is I think it was responsible government because we've had a change in committee, I say leadership, and the planning board still remembered and took action, and we decided to keep what was done last year. And so I think it just speaks a lot to how we all work together and that we continue to monitor that. So that's the key takeaway.
On that, for everybody's benefit, as the conversation went up, we really do listen to people in their respective expertise. And on this particular ordinance, the planning board attorney, the legal review of it said the way this is written from whenever it showed up back in the sixties or whatever, was really unconstitutional. So we're creating an unnecessary burden on the town residents without really an issue that we weren't having this on the book. And yeah, I've got my background in law enforcement and all, but I'm not a big fan of just a lot of rules that can be arbitrarily applied or manipulated. Less is more, and being very concise on what we're actually trying to do, so it's the mark that it was intended, not just for the sake of having something on the books. So I was glad that we worked together to clear that out. So planning board, the community, everybody's got a clean slate. We've got something different coming down the pike that tweaks us, but I thought it was a good deal for everybody.
Yeah, so, I mean, like I said, if we're upheld with tier A, we're gonna have to go back to this X amount of chickens and where they are, which is what started with the chickens, but, then the horses and bigger animals obviously need larger grazing area, but at that point, it's really out of our hands for complying with state DEP requirements.
And then the last thing, the planning board, or should I say the land use board, is continuing to monitor the accessory structures and the trends going on with people putting on additions and or outbuildings on their property. And right now, that's still being monitored. There's been some discussions on certain sizes and square footage, and should you have accessory apartments and plumbing and what that could be used for, and are you renting that out for the right reasons? But that's still an ongoing discussion.
Yeah, part of the discussion is, I guess, some of the more benevolent part of that discussion is we've had, some older residents ask how can we stay on our property and maybe making them multi-generational. Echo units are allowed, but echo maybe doesn't necessarily want the echo unit, and so there's other options to then put an accessory apartment at the first floor of the garage. So, but anyway, that was part of it, was looking at some of our residents that have aged here in town and no longer need their home, and maybe their children want to purchase it and they can stay here in Bethlehem. And we're not an inexpensive town when it comes to taxes, unfortunately, and so we want to be respectful and see if we can find ways to keep people here throughout their lives.
Well, a couple other things, regarding that is the septic systems, and people are gonna be putting in the septic systems handle it, or we're gonna have to have that replaced, and then there's all of that associated with that. And then also we had talked about, and this is going back a few years actually, about low income housing was mentioned earlier. Accessory apartments for low income.
We still have a program for working through the kinks of it apparently, but there is a accessory apartment. If you have a pre-existing accessory apartment, you can get that to become into compliance and count for one of our affordable housing units. And we have a grant program to supply about $20,000 to $25,000 each year. I think it is the most we would able to be doing based on the fund to bring that up to code so that we can count that as a unit. And I think there's only 4 of them left, but I have to look, but there's a limited number of those that are left of those.
That's it.
So, governing body members, Mr. Lindsay? Mr. Randall?
Just really a couple of things on the Route 78 stuff, patience, folks. The people coming through our town, they have a different mindset because they thought they were gonna do 85 miles an hour to get from point A to point B, and they think 173 in our side roads can handle 85. We're picking up the pieces with the squad. So I have plenty of stories. Just, we live here, that would be a temporary problem. We're all frustrated, kind of roll with it, take a deep breath. One thing that we have over everybody else is, we know all the back roads, that nobody is gonna go up like Ludlow or Iron Bridge, some of these other places. Enjoy the scenic ride. I'm actually connecting with a little bit slower pace and leaving a little sooner, so I would say that. The second thing is, we had a lot of good stuff here tonight, right? Good conversation, good dialogue, good ideas. We open up to the public pretty often instead of like wait until the very end. Let's get these things rolling. Well, Paul's pointed out how we're responsive to me in the conversation. But I'll tell you, when I sat in those chairs, I had one view. Sitting in these chairs, it's an entirely different experience. For a lot of the issues that we can handle, I'm going to challenge all of you when it's Paul, whoever's in that seat, and we have vacancies on all these different places where you can put in a couple minutes and actually get on the inside of the conversation and be part of the decision makers. We shouldn't have any vacancies. You're all smart. I've met a lot of you over the last couple of years. Take a little time, getting reconnected. It's healthy for the mind, it's healthy for the heart, because you're actually doing something for your town. Where you have that chance, we would love the input because that helps us stay a little more fresh on how to approach these issues. I don't have every answer for all, but none of us do. When we have this, the gel that comes up helps us get a little bit closer more. Hey, if we make a mistake on something, the conversation helps squeeze out what the better direction is, and we just adapt and move and pivot, we go. But we shouldn't have any vacancies. I know all of it, or I've met many of it. Step up even for a little bit. We would really appreciate it. You put a little time in the barrel, when you get your life back, it's all good. I know I'm a little preaching here, but being out there and seeing so many things and knowing that action is one of the best cures for feeling anxious or unsettled or frustrated, jump in. And we drink a lot of coffee, so it's great.
Every minute.
There you go.
For 12 years.
I talk fast enough, so I left my average. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. There's not anything else to.
You want me to follow that?
I was just being positive. Go back to.
No, I'll end on the positive vibe. I'm good.
Report of Township Administrator.
I just have a couple of things. The cleaning service has been coming from school, so that's been great. Anthony's been coming. Kathy's gonna be starting now. We have a new postage machine. It's all set up.
For a small town, that's really exciting. You don't think so, but that was like a big part of our.
So we started using the new postage machine today, so that's great. Judy had mentioned the personnel policy, so we're going over that, making updates and whatever changes that we need to make to that. The copy machine was serviced, so going back also Judy said about IT, it could kind of fall under that.
Okay.
The tech came, we had the machine serviced, the tech came, recommended us getting a new copy machine.
We've talked about recently.
Yes, that our, it's hard to get parts, ours is so old, so.
Carl knows about that.
But being older.
Sorry, Carl. Not Carl's a rat. Some of the DPW.
Oh, listen.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we are somewhat proactive, so we went back to this year having staff meetings too, so the last month of every month, and that was part of our staff meeting last month, was the copy machine sufficient to keep going, and the answer was yes, because it does its job, and then when we had it serviced, and I noticed at the last planning board meeting there was, where like, does it have lines? The last planning board has noticed in the packets, all had lines again, so we'll address as we need to. So, thank you. Report of Mayor. I'm just to dovetail, so for those who don't know, we have a shared service agreement, we try to work with our schools, so in the past, we had a snow plowing agreement, we renewed that back in 2020, and now we've started a new shared service agreement. Our cleaning service no longer had the staff, as everybody talks about, people leaving companies. Our cleaning service withdrew from their contracts, they didn't have staff members to come to Bethlehem Township. So we went out to bid and then also approached the school board, and so the custodial staff is now, we have a shared service agreement to come clean our municipal offices, which has worked out great for both of us and is respectful for the taxpayers as well. So Tony helped negotiate that, and it's really a great thing for all of us. And we're excited to keep building that relationship with the school board. Ms. Nelson and I met with the school board president, and we continue to have open communications throughout their process.
And he's been real.
Yes, yes.
He's been great.
So I also at the last staff meeting, we were talking about updates. So a lot of people are asking about two pieces of litigation that keep going up, and while they're the litigation, the two are the Maderos claim against the township and the ADS environmental, which we already had the update. So I've made the commitment under my mayor's report each meeting to provide updates on those two cases. So regarding the Maderos, they're following the insurance company's protocol. So once a claim is made against the township, then it's assigned an outside attorney that is not power of attorney to review the case, and that is paid for by the insurance company. And so the next step is they'll be going into a mediation process to discuss if there's any way to settle or remediate that before going to court and avoid attorney's fees on both sides. So that's where that stands. Again, it's when I say we as a committee are allowing the insurance company to do this because that's what the protocols are, following those as strictly as we can. And I think we've already received the ADS update, so I will refrain from that. And it was a very good update. So I was disappointed I couldn't share it. The other thing, I'm putting them all together, the stormwater tier A, there's a new mandate that all commercial properties in Bethlehem Township and rental properties have to supply their insurance certificate to us here in the municipality. And then there's a lead paint testing requirement also. These are all separate bills by the state. All of them are unfunded mandates, regarding the insurance certificate for businesses. One, we don't have a business registry here in Bethlehem Township. We wouldn't even know where to start. And that's what I'm saying here in public. I'm going to say to DCA, if you want me to do this within 90 days, what do you want me to do? Because I do not know who is a business and who is not. And I'm not going to go door knocking. And I'm not going to hire another staff member. So again, I've made some outreach. And when I said about the tier A being an unfunded mandate through the New Jersey League of Municipalities and the Conference of Mayors, those two organizations are going to be taking all of these on as unfunded mandates and see how far we can push back so that we can protect our small towns like Bethlehem Township. So I'll be updating on that. We'll keep working on that. My other update was on the Rockfall mitigation, which we also covered. And then the final one is a fun one, is our 100 games. So Union Township Mayor David D. Girolamo had started this idea post-pandemic to get communities together. So 8 municipalities are competing Saturday afternoon at Finn Park in Union Township. So if you'd like to come out and support Bethlehem Township, Mr. Lindsay, Ms. Nelson is joining me along with 24 or 5 other residents plus some volunteers to compete in fun games. And they range from name that tune, spelling bee, Jenga, to tug of war, pie eating, kickball, volleyball, cornhole, hula hoop contest. So it'll be a fun afternoon. Starts at 12 over at Finn Park, ends about 6 o'clock. Just a great way to get the community back out together. So as most of our surrounding towns, Bethlehem, Union, Alexandria, Franklin, Highbridge, Clinton Township, and Union, we started it. So we're looking to let them know what we already know, that Bethlehem is best. So feel free to come out and try.
Rescue squad was, do not want to issue post-pie eating conditions.
So
Bring ice packs and tons.
So wait, I'm kind of the coach of the team, if you will. So whoever's doing the pie eating, should they do the relay race after that?
I'll bring the oxygen. I'll bring the oxygen stretch.
I'm glad you're there. That was about one of my requests. So Union, Clinton, and Bethlehem were kind of the first 3 that jumped on it. And I was saying we definitely need the rescue squad out there. But it'll be a fun event. Like I said, you come out and cheer. We would appreciate it. We'll let you know the results next meeting. I don't have anything else unless there's questions for me, but. Yeah, can I have a motion open for public comment?
I'll make a motion, I'll open the public comment. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any further public comment?
Barbara Cochran, 507 Charleston Road. So with regards to the stormwater management issue, the main reason the P bumped us up to the tier A is because our Bethlehem Township rivers, creeks, and waters are polluted. So what I think it might be an inconvenience, but poor water quality can lead to serious health issues. This is my first comment. And then about the Vliet House, I remember in 2017, if I remember correctly, we had two professionals when the property was purchased. Two professionals came to evaluate the property, and well, their spontaneous assessment was that the house was from the was built in two different periods, but they were not that interested by the house, if I remember, but they were more interested in the construction of the barn. But there was no enthusiasm. Do you remember?
Those two,
Yes.
actually, one of those consultants was hired as per.
Right.
grant.
Yes,
No,
and there was no big enthusiasm on their part. But
on the house.
that's all.
Well,
Thank-
Okay. Okay, any other questions, comments?
I just want to thank you all for all your hard work and dedication in serving our community. It's been a great meeting.
Thank you, thank you. Tom, you have a, oh, yes, I'm sorry, say the name and address. No.
Oh, Maureen Leonard, 2211.
Okay, thank you. And then was somebody speaking on Zoom?
Yes, can you hear me?
Here, you just state your name and address for us.
Mike Mitros, 41 Stats Road. I'm late to this meeting, so I don't know if this has been addressed already, but I was wondering if the township has any plans for the dead ash removal that's actually on roadways in the township. For all the dead ash trees that are starting to fall into the roadways.
Well, I assume most of our plans have been working with actually JCP&L for right away. Obviously the roadways are concerned, but the first concern is electrical infrastructure. At this point, we don't have funding in place to address it beyond what we can do with our utility partner.
Yeah, so we had a large branch go down on Stats this morning. The guys are out there clearing it off the road, and there's quite a few trees just on Stats that are not going to hit the. They're not going to involve JCP&L, and they're just going to fall. They're going to fall on the road like within, I would say, within months. It's a very hazardous situation, and I'm wondering if there's any opportunities for some emergency funding, or even can a municipality enact an emergency assessment for this tree removal on all the roadways? On the stuff that's not being taken care of by JCP&L.
Look and see what we can do. I'm always open to that. A lot of these are the homeowner's responsibility too.
Yeah.
So
even if it's like, is that still the case? Even if it's like just 2 or 3 feet from the road?
Typically, yes.
And so how would you, as a homeowner, I took down about 50 dead ash on the property 2 years ago. But as far as the other ones that are actually on the roadway, how would I go about taking that down? Do I need to have the road closed? Because it's very...
Yeah, the tree contractor would take care of that. They would do a road closure, have a flag person as part of the project. Thank you for being a responsible homeowner. I mean, that's the tough part. A lot of these are not the onus of the homeowner. I mean, I took down 11 trees myself this year. I live in a cul-de-sac, but I took down 11 just because they need to come down. It's not inexpensive, we realize that, but the township doesn't really have the financial wherewithal, and if they are on private property, we don't have the access to do that. We would need easements, and we wouldn't be able to do that for, multiple properties.
Yeah. So even if it is very close to the road, so it's still considered private property if it's within 3 feet of the road?
I would say yes, but I'm gonna look at our attorney and see if there's some determination. Yeah. Yeah, so I'll look into it and see, but I know, even during, Superstorm Sandy and stuff, we had a lot of trees come down. And those removals, we would clear roads, but even if they were near the road within a few feet, they were the homeowner's responsibility for the final cut up and cleanup. So I will try to clarify that, so you know what it is, and I'm not opposed to trying to find some other way to help, because yeah, it does cost us money in the end once they come down to come out, and especially if it's after hours. I know even last Sunday I responded to JCPL clean that up. I didn't bother Mr. Roth. His tree came down at a large limb across Turkey Hill and was holding up the wires. So JCPL cleaned it all up on a Sunday night. So it was a beautiful day. It was perfectly sunny day. This tree came down. So we know it's an issue, but as far as being able to effectively afford a total solution, it's going to be difficult.
I see. Yeah, it's going to be it's a scary problem, because I drive around and I see so many of them hanging over the roadways. It's frightening.
Yeah, no, and last year, I think it was 528 trees, or it was over 500 trees JCP&L took down within Bethlehem Township.
Okay, I'll contact them again, even though some of them might still be in there right away. So, or I should be endangering their power line, so I will contact them as well. And
we'll also reach out. We do have a municipal representative at JCP&L who's been very responsive, and so we will reach out to her and have her check those representative crew out too and follow up with them.
Okay, thank you.
Also, we will have to find out. The JCP&L had two separate programs. One was specifically through grants they received to remove dead ash trees, and then the other one was repairing any tree within the right of way of the wires. So I'll find out more about the grants, what they plan to do with the 4 trees in the area. I'm assuming it's going to be near the wires, so.
Yeah, BPU allowed for a rate increase at JCP&L a few years ago based on tree removal. So we do try to hold them to it. Like I said, last year was over 500 trees they took down. So I will have them come out and take a look.
Yeah, they actually had marked, I guess going back 3 years ago, they marked about 10 trees on my property, and then he decided not to take them down. And those are part of the 50 that I took down myself 2 years ago. Fortunately, I was able to sell the wood, so it wound up not costing me that much to, I think it was about $10,000 to take them down, which was a pretty good deal for 50 trees, I thought. So,
it's a great deal, yeah. Like I say, so I'm not trying to dismiss it or just, I don't want to guarantee something that I can't, but we will do our best to see if we can find some other solutions.
Okay, thank you. All I have.
Thank you.
Bye.
Any other public comments? Yeah, but I think Ms. Cochran was using his. Oh, okay. The motion close.
Motion closed, public comment.
Second.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
There's no topic for executive session, so I have a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second. In favor?
Aye.
Great meeting.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, Edwin.
Yeah.